Morning guys, thank you for your patience. So here's the answer to number 1 from last week's assignment. You need to be parallel to that equation through that point. So the first thing I did is get rid of the y-intercept because it's no longer applicable in the new equation. And then I plugged in the x and the y, solved for the new y-intercept, and then I wrote the equation of y equals 3x plus 6. Also recall point-slope form. We already had the point. We knew the slope because it was parallel, so I just plugged in the values. So y minus 3 equals 3 times the quantity x plus 1. And then standard form, to recap that, you can only use integers, so that's no fractions, no decimals, and that leading term has to be positive. So I moved the y over, moved the 6 over, and that gave me standard form. Now the other one was a little more complicated. I gave you an equation in standard form, so that meant that you didn't have the slope, so you first had to find it. So I rewrote this equation into y equals 2x minus 6, and then since it's perpendicular, you take the opposite of the reciprocal. So my perpendicular slope was negative 1/2, and then I repeated the process. So y equals negative 1/2 x plus b, plugged in the values, I got 13/2. So over here, I would have in slope-intercept form, point slope would have been a lot easier, just y minus 4 equals negative 1/2 x minus 5, and then of course standard form. So that's the explanation of that assignment. Now for today, we're going to be talking about inverse functions. Now if you recall, inverse functions, and I'll be posting this as a picture, so in case you didn't get the video, is when the output of a function becomes the input. So for example, if I plug in 3 into f of x equals 2x plus 1, I get f of 3 equals 2 times 3 plus 1. 2 times 3 is 6, so 6 plus 1 is 7. The inverse would be, what function do I plug 7 into to get 3? So we're working backwards. So the process will be, I'm going to write in terms of x and y, because that's what we're comfortable with. I'm first going to switch my x and my y. So instead of y equals 2x plus 1, it becomes x equals 2y plus 1. And then I solve for y. So there's my process. Subtract 1, divide by 2. Y equals x minus 1 over 2 would be the inverse to y equals 2x plus 1. Now just to double check to make sure that I'm right, we're trying to find what function, if I plug 7 into it, I get an output of 3. So I plugged in 7, 7 minus 1 is 6, 6 divided by 2 is 3. The notation for the inverse would have an exponent of negative 1. Well, at least it looks like an exponent. If this was truly an exponent, it would be on the other side, of the x over here. This is f to the negative 1 of x. So this isn't an exponent of negative 1. This is just simply a notation saying the inverse of the f function. And I can say the inverse equals x minus 1. All right, and your assignment, I can't find it right now. I will take a picture and post it. Sorry.